Greetings, Wastelanders, and welcome to Texas Morning. Anyway, in this video, we're going to be talking about becoming the scrap king, collecting lots of scrap. If you're in settlement building like I am in my current playthrough, then you're going to need scrap, and I mean a lot of scrap. And people will tell you get a ton of scrap from scrapping everything in Sanctuary, which we did in the last video, but I can tell you right now, it ain't enough. It ain't near enough if you're into settlement building. So we're going to go through getting additional scrap and a few other things in this video. So let's get to it. Since this is a cheater's guide, we're going to be talking about ways that are not normally available in normal playthrough, aka the console. We'll also be doing a bit with bat files here. So a bat file is a batch file. Bat is short for batch. Basically, you can do a lot of things with one batch file. They're not really programs, but they're a list of commands, console commands in this case. So we'll talk a little bit about those, and I'll show you some batch files I've used in the past to basically collect a lot of junk and other stuff that you need for your playthrough that they're can be a little stingy up front about getting. Additional note, I think I've mentioned this before in one of the previous videos, but I'm using the Start Me Up mod from Nexus Mods. I didn't start with the normal playthrough, so I have no attachment to the actual storyline, which I'm pretty much going to be ignoring for a good part of this playthrough, since the main focus here is going to be on settlement building and fun stuff like that. So anyway, let's get to it again. So the first thing we're going to want to look at here are batch files. Now, a batch file is basically a simple text file with a list of commands in it that you're going to execute. I've got several of them sitting right here. They're stored in the Fallout 4 directory. If you watched the last one of my last videos, you'll see I made a shortcut to Steam Apps, which then common in Fallout 4, but I'll quickly list the full path name below where you need to store these bat files. But again, they're simple text files. You can create them with any text editor. So the first one we got here we want to look at is my bat file for crafting supplies. So we'll open that up here, and you can see we got a couple of double slashes for comments. These are basically ignored by Fallout 4 program. Then we actually have the commands. In this case, we're using the player add item command, which is going to add an item to your inventory. You could actually do these one at a time in the console from Fallout 4, but as I said, batch file or bat file, we're doing a whole bunch of them at once. And as you can see, as we go through this file, we pretty much have every item you might want to use for construction. So after the player add item is the item's ID code or form ID. Yeah, you can find these on the many web pages. And then after that is a number for the number of items we're adding. We have another bat file here. This has some combat armor and some leather armor in it. Interesting thing about the armor is, even though you look up, you'll say a number for like the light or basic armor, you might get heavy armor, or you might get, any of the other types, various subtypes of that armor. It's not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to get the specific type you're asking for. At least that's what I've noticed. Here's some clothing items: a Minuteman outfit, a red bandana, a hat, some glasses. Here's a bat file with the various power armor pieces. Note about these: they're going to come with different paint jobs. They're going to come with at different modification levels. They're not all going to be base pieces. It's just going to be sort of random as far as I can tell. Here's a bat file for some guns, combat rifle. You know, it's also got the like the 308 receiver, long ported barrel. These are mods for guns. These, if you have these, you can install them on guns. You don't need to be of the proper gun nut level to build them if they're in your inventory. Unlike the crafting stations from last video where you needed to be the right level. So anyway, well, you don't even have to be on a workbench. You just need to use the tilde sign in the upper left part of your keyboard, and we're going to type bat, short for batch file, and then we're going to type the name of our file. You don't need the extension. You can put it on if you want. And then just like that, everything's in our inventory. Of course, since I did 500 of every crafting supply, I'm carrying too much and can't move around, so we'll go ahead and put this in the workbench. Next, I want to head on up to Sanctuary. I put things in the Red Rocket workbench. I'll explain why in a little bit, but I take local leader 1, which requires a charisma of 5 or 6, I think it is. I'll have to look at the perk chart table, but that allows you to create supply lines between your settlements, and I created a supply line between Red Rocket and Sanctuary, and that is actually my supplier right there, making the run between the two settlements. What this means is that anything in any sort of scrap or aid item inside the workbench at Red Rocket I can use to build here in Sanctuary or craft. I've been playing here for a little while, so let's take a look around Sanctuary. I've sort of built my entryway here. I've got a couple of turrets, guard posts. I do have one guard right at the moment. To actually build this guard post, I actually had to use the console commands like set position, mod position for Z, get angle Z, set angle Z, get angle X, to actually get the pieces in the proper place because they wouldn't snap in here by themselves. Anyway, I added a recruiting beacon, and I've been recruiting settlers steadily over the last several levels. There's my water purifier. This is actually a small water purifier. I need a higher rating in science to build a bigger one. A generator. The recruiting beacon takes 1 point of energy, the water purifier takes 2, and the generator makes 3, so it's covering both of them. I've also added several scrapping stations. Now, interesting thing about the way scrapping stations work, if you have a huge amount of scrap in your workbench at the settlement, then your scrappers assigned to these scrapping stations will not scrap anything. You basically need to have no scrap inside your workbench. So this is one of the reasons I created a supply line to Red Rocket, and I've got most of my scrap at Red Rocket. Keeping my scrapping stations here in Sanctuary and the workbench empty of scrap will cause them to actually generate scrap. Because I had a radio beacon, I also acquired a Brahmin that came wandering in. This is a Brahmin feeding trough that shall keep the Brahmin here instead of wandering around the settlement. Okay, what else? I built this, we looked at this platform already. And I've started putting down some garden plots here. I do have one gardener. I didn't have very much in the way of actual stuff to plant. Now I could actually give myself this stuff if I wanted to, but since I'm got gardener growing a garden, they'll be growing some, and it will show up in my workbench, and I will be able to make more plants. In fact, some has already showed up in the workbench. And I'll eventually add more planters, so yeah. Next, a little problem with my settlers doing specific jobs and all wearing different clothing. So I'm going to use the Creation Club Vault Suit mod that you can pick up from Creation Club, and if you check every now and then, it might actually be free. This allows you to change the color and the number on your vault suit. There's 8 different colors basically. My aim here is to have specific colored vault suits for specific jobs. So I can at a glance tell what a settler is supposed to be doing and who doesn't have a job. Now I'm going to be using a duplication trick, which is another console command. So I'm going to put several of these vault suits, which I've gone and modified in the armor bench or armor. Anyways, I'm going to be putting them in one of these lockers. I get the number of both lockers here. Then I'm going to select the locker that has the actual stuff I want to duplicate in it and open the console and duplicate all items. And then I'm going to give it the number of the other locker, not the one I put things in, but the other locker. Now, if things go right, you should duplicate something into your second locker. So that's, I mean, there are other ways to duplicate stuff, but this is a lot faster than some of the other ways of doing it. I mean, you can do it with there's several glitches you can do it with, and there's a couple other ways to do it with the console, but I find this to be the most efficient way. So let's go ahead and run around and reclothe all our settlers in vault suits that match the job they're doing. Now that we've done that, the next thing I want to do is I want to grab all the scrap out of my workbench here and in Sanctuary and take it all down to Red Rock. I'm also taking all of my health items or aid items down there too, because I can access those also with a supply line. Weapons, armor, clothes, things like that, they have to stay in the Sanctuary workbench, but they don't affect what my scrappers are doing. Okay, now that I've been running around the map for several days, I'm going to head back to Sanctuary. I've leveled up a bit. I've collected a lot more. I've had a lot more people come with my radio beacon, but I want to go over here and look at the workbench and see what people have produced. Oh, I do need to throw a couple beds down because I want to keep my settlers happy, and each one of them needs their own bed for that. So I need at least 13 beds. Anyway, back to the workbench. So if I shift through my inventory, let's see, weapons, apparel, their age. So far I cleaned all this stuff out before, and since then it's been a couple of days. There's 3 carrots, 9 corn, 13 moody fruit, some purified water, some potatoes. So we'll grab all that. Then we've got a bunch of junk that was collected by my scrappers over the last couple of days. So we'll just take all that. And we'll take it back down to the Red Rocket just to keep my scrappers scrapping stuff. And since I got a couple levels, we'll go ahead and level up here. Since this character build is he's more of a merchant, I'm gonna need some sneaking, and I'm gonna be using long rifles, so I'm gonna have to, for long range combat, when I engage in combat, normally this character's gonna try and avoid it, but so I'll need rifle, and I need to increase my agility so I can take some of the sneak perks. Anyway, that's it for this video. And so we're at the end of another video. Thank you for joining me. Like I say, the main shot of this video was increasing your scrapping or increasing the amount of junk you have so you can go ahead and do huge amounts of building in your settlements if that's what you're into this game run through. We covered bat files, and we covered the duplication with lockers. It could actually be any container. It doesn't have to be lockers. So yeah, I think I've hit my target for this video. So I'll think about what this character is going to do next video. Probably going to be a lot of construction in the next video. Anyways, please like, subscribe, and comment, and join me next time around.